content in this podcast is not financial or investment advice.
We've been focused the past 6 weeks on actually launching our own metaverse. And let me
Really?
tap
Interesting.
into that a little bit. So over the past 6 months, as we started our Genesis and Drop One collection, we knew that having avatars and having metaverse compatibility would be the future.
Sure.
Okay. And it comes down to very simple logic, right? We were successful selling a digital collection.
Right.
Okay. So a digital asset tied to physical. But in our revenue model moving forward, we can also sell digital onlys,
Sure.
okay? Digital wearables on avatars that can flex these digital wearables amongst different metaverses. For example, Decentraland or Sandbox are some of the
Of course.
biggest, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, we can sell physicals only as well.
Hi, I'm Mike D'Annunzio. Welcome to another edition of Metaverse Matters by Pebble Ventures. Today, I'm really fortunate to be joined by George Yang. He is the founder of Cult and Rain, which is positioned as one of the first luxury fashion houses born from crypto. George has an amazing story, both from all of his expertise from Parsons to major brands working all across the world, and then making a complete pivot into Web3. And George launched Cult and Rain just several months ago and has an incredible vision, which he shares about where he's taking this brand, both from a physical standpoint, a digital standpoint, and an experiential standpoint. So really lucky to have George come on. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. So let's get to it. Welcome to the next episode of Metaverse Matters. I'm here with George Yang, who is the founder of a new Web3 brand called Cult and Rain. George brings an amazing background in traditional fashion, as well as technology and business, and now has launched this new venture, which I'm really excited to talk about today. So, George, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Michael. It's a true pleasure.
That's great. So why don't you just tell me how, actually, maybe we'll start with your background. So you've got this traditional fashion background. You've worked at some amazing places all over the world. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that has kind of led or informed or inspired you to do Cult and Rain?
Yeah, so I actually started from a business background. I went to school, University of Texas in Austin with a business degree in marketing. Got all my internships back then in technology, between Compaq Computers, IBM. This
Sure.
was around 2002 when I graduated and decided actually to first jump into tech. So I worked at IBM as a product manager for about a year, and then I
Okay.
decided that, this really wasn't the path that I wanted to take, and literally kind of just applied to Parsons School of Design on a whim and just said, okay, if I get in based on my, let's say, creative abilities of sketching, that
Sure.
I might consider moving to New York and starting from scratch. So lo and behold, I got accepted, decided to kind of leave tech behind, packed up two suitcases and ended up in New York City. So I started my fashion career studying at Parsons, and then I've worked for companies such as DKNY. I worked at John Varvatos. I helped launch Theory menswear from 2004
Yeah,
to 2010, which
I
was a
remember that.
great run under visionary, founder and CEO Andrew Rosen. Definitely learned a lot there from that school, and then got recruited to Milan in 2010 and became design director at Costume Nationale, which is a luxury high-end Italian fashion brand. From there, I worked for about 3 years, got recruited to Paris, worked for a French maison called Gil Roche, did a consultancy stint there for about a couple seasons. And then in the past 7 years, 6 years, worked at Cerruti Paris, also as design director for men's and women's, and basically did runway fashion for the past 10 years.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
I decided to give that up and kind of turn into entrepreneurship 2020, right before the pandemic hit.
Mm.
And I just felt that, it was time to start my own brand, okay, after all these years. But most of all, I think what drew me to Web3 was the fact that I felt the fashion system was broken, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. Before I left, I was designing like 10 collections a year, So there were multiple reasons why. I just felt like, the system had broke. For example, I'm not a believer in wholesale. Okay, I believe
Yeah.
in direct to consumer.
Sure.
Uh, I'm definitely more of a DTC, let's say, mindset,
Right.
more brick and mortar, or let's say direct to consumer, e-com, and obviously now metaverse, right? So that was one of the reasons. Sustainability was another reason why I decided to start our new model because we were just producing way too much clothes, and then also timing, right? So because of the wholesale model,
Sure.
you're showcasing a collection in spring, but you're actually selling, winter clothes, vice versa.
Right.
So I just felt that from inception to the end, it just took way too long. And customers nowadays, they expect really see now, buy now, right? So I decided to move back to New York, okay, with my wife and kind of jump head into Web3. And my initial idea had nothing to do with NFTs or
Hmm. Really?
metaverse yet. Yeah. I've always been a sneakerhead,
You have. Okay.
yeah, for kind of the past 20 years. And I have a massive collection. And after kind of doing runway collections for 10 years, I was kind of more inspired by designing shoes because it was something close to me and it was something
Sure.
new for me as well, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to stay focused, very focused on a category
Right.
that would kind of become the foundation of a brand. And I dipped into Web3 and blockchain, not on the crypto side and not on the NFT side first. It was based on an idea of putting a chip inside a shoe.
Okay.
Because when I moved from Paris to New York, I unloaded a lot of my collection, I guess for road money, let's say. And the fact that my wife just couldn't stand anymore, all my shoes stacked up all over the place around the house. So I sold a good chunk of it. And what happened was some resellers came back to me, and told me that my shoe was fake. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. So I had been polishing and, holding on to these treasures of mine for years, not wearing them,
Right.
keeping them in like climate control in boxes. And I was kind of like heartbroken when they told me. So I said, well, there has to be a way. Who are you to tell me that this is fake? For example, StockX, right? I know these details more than you. I've studied it. So if you're an expert, I'm an expert too, right?
Right.
But of course, I just thought there was a better way. So why not? And then I started researching, let's say, blockchain technology for authentication and ownership transferring. That's kind of my first initial idea.
Got it.
Putting a, NFC chip inside a shoe, tying that to blockchain from inception, from the
Right.
production level,
Yep.
and then throughout the supply chain, you could track it. And then at the end of the supply chain, when it gets shipped to me, right? I can then scan it with my iPhone and
Sure.
it would be authenticated and the ownership would be registered on the blockchain. Then
Right.
from me to you, you can then, right, scan it and
Sure.
claim ownership of it, authenticate it, and then so on and so forth. So if it ever got to a reseller like StockX or eBay, the expert there could do the same to validate it,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
that was kind of a clever concept I thought about. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to start with sneakers, that's kind of what I'm going to fundraise on, right? Because
Right.
at that point it was version 1.0.
Got it.
So I went down this fundraising path, as a new entrepreneur, super exciting, putting together a team, meeting with different investors based on a business plan, based on a P&L. And basically, at the end of the day, I pretty much struck out after 3 months of pitching,
Sure. Okay.
because every single person came to me and was like, it takes too long to make money. The capital investment in the beginning is way too high to produce made in Italy shoes because I
Right.
believe in a scarcity model, in a luxury model. I wanted to go super high end fashion. Um, so at that point, I needed to decide whether or not to pivot, right? And I did get an LOI on like,
Yeah.
on 500K, but they wanted a huge percentage of equity, so I didn't take the deal at the end. So at that point, I saw that, NFT market started to heat up, right? And I knew way back then, this was about, yeah, like 10, 11 months ago, okay, that if digital assets had value in them, meaning if you could tie a JPEG and call it an original art piece because it was tied to blockchain,
Right.
whether that's a JPEG or MP4 file, anything that's a digital file, I knew that that would change the world,
Really interesting.
100%, because as a designer and as a creative, you know, we're always playing around with digital, let's say, imagery, right? Yeah, and we would take imagery in, use it as inspiration, as mood boards, But if these imagery or these assets could be classified as original artwork,
Right.
right? Then the game changes,
Sure.
absolutely. So at that point, I thought of an idea of, you know, basically crowdfunding, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Crowdfunding from the Web3 community
Right.
with an NFT collection that
Right.
were, let's say, super radical 3D animation designs, okay? But matched with the physical twin,
Right.
matched with the made in Italy luxury sneaker physical twin as a package, because when I started shopping for NFTs in the beginning, the utilities attached were really kind of like the VIP pass into their community, right? Into their world.
Right.
And it was very speculative, right? When it came to a PFP project, you're basically trading a JPEG image, with utilities of access into their community. You have certain perks, but the main, let's say, draw of it was that you could trade it in open market and you could, turn a profit on it, right?
Sure.
Almost became like a stock at the end. So I thought, well, I could bring fashion into Web3, luxury fashion into Web3, tie these assets to a physical, and then you would have kind of two for the price of one, right? Not only would you own an NFT, kind of our VIP pass into Colton Rain with a lot of perks to it, right? Access to events, future discounts
Sure.
on, let's say, future drops, first of the line, future reservation lists, et cetera, et cetera. We have a long list of utilities, but the main utility would become the shoe. And this, I would say, formula or this plan would also be made to order, right? So you purchase the NFT first, and then based on the units that we sold, we would then produce it kind of bespoke,
Right.
okay?
Sure.
And this way we would solve, right, stock problems. We would obviously solve a lot of sustainability problems, right? Because, producing samples in normal traditional fashion way, you're wasting a lot of materials, right, at the end. And also, goods that aren't sold at the end are always marked down, and eventually they all end up in landfills, right? So, we came up with this clever idea with my team, and then we just decided at that point to kind of go all in, right? So I essentially put in my life savings into the project and self-funded it at that point and took a huge gamble
Sure.
before we launched our Genesis collection in February. So we were very lucky, we kind of caught the market at the right time,
Yeah.
and we ended up selling and generating about 1.9 million in revenue, okay, which was pretty much the number that I was fundraising, on version 1.0.
Sure.
So from that sale, which occurred over, like a 3-day period, we realized the power of, let's say, Web3, But of course, we had to build our community grounds up because the street credibility within Web3 is super important. So we built our community, we opened Discord, we opened Twitter, And we started, partnering up with different communities as well as collaboration.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, how you did that, because building community is incredibly important in this new world that we're in. But it's also incredibly challenging. It's not easy to build
100%.
community, engage. I'd love to hear more about how you guys approached it because you were successful at it.
100%. When we started our marketing campaign, we kind of, because our executive team, our leadership team is built across fashion, entertainment, and technology,
Got it.
So we come from, most of us have like 20, 25 years experience in
Sure.
traditional fashion business, okay? Of course, most of us have experience in Web 2, e-commerce, social media, that for me is Web 2.
Sure.
But the Web3 side was so new. It was such a new venture that it only pertained to our advisors or our technology team. There wasn't really a formula yet on how do you market to customers of Web3, right?
Right.
At
Sure.
that point, this was back in, like December, right? In November.
Just like
So
your like dog ears.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that in Web3 is, we always say a month is like a year, right? A
Right.
week is a month because the space is moving so fast. We had the option to market the Web 2 way, so find an influencer or find an artist or find a celebrity to kind of promote the brand, but we knew that that would be shunned by the Web3 community because they're very much a tight knit, a group that is, you know, I would say like anti-establishment, okay? And the reason why they all jumped on the Web3 bandwagon is they also wanted to leave the traditional old world behind and venture into something that was decentralized, right?
Sure.
Something
Yeah.
that was fully transparent, which is another big reason, sorry, that I decided to jump into Web3 was transparency. The fact that you can see every transaction on the blockchain for me is really important, that there's not one big brother that holds all the cards.
Right. Sure.
So we decided to take a marketing strategy of building community from grounds up. And like you said, building community is very difficult. So what we did with our Genesis drop was partner up with two communities plus three, let's say, homegrown Web3 artists.
Okay.
Okay. And that kind of got our street credibility going from day one. Obviously, it wasn't easy to pitch them a startup,
Sure.
from zero. But when they saw our creative, let's say, power, right? When they saw our assets, when they saw our vision, when they saw our website, they became believers, because we're very much keen on creative, right? We're very much keen on our craft, which is art and design. So we are promoting a luxury brand. So all of our assets that we present, and we showcase are all at a, to us, a luxury level. So we sold them on our idea and they partnered up with us. And that's kind of how we gained traction in the beginning on building a community, especially opening Discord. That
Right.
was that was not an easy feat to attract. I think we have like 6,000 members right now. To build that organically over the months has definitely been challenging as well. Yeah.
And so, how do you think about it as where you're going to go from here? So, you've had this Genesis drop. Give us an update on where you are in terms of production, delivering of the shoes, the feedback you've gotten. Really love to
Yeah.
hear how the
So
consumer's reacting to it.
great, great question. So right now, shoes are under production. Okay,
Sure.
we've been producing the shoes starting from zero. Right, we
Yeah.
had to invest heavily into mold production because made in Italy, original designs are extremely expensive. So I've kind of had to learn the hard way. As far as producing out of Italy and all the logistics and free shipping worldwide, right? Because we're direct to consumer. So we had um, 41 countries of customer base
Oh my
over
gosh.
3 days. So you can imagine logistics
Sure.
nightmare that we had to face because we promised to deliver door to door, essentially.
Right. Right.
So that's been a learning experience for sure. So the shoes are under production and we're scheduled to deliver them, end of July, beginning of August timeframe right now. So it has taken a little bit longer than we anticipated due to the supply chain,
Sure.
let's say, drama, right, around the
Right.
world. It's been a shortage of materials along every aspect, okay, of our development. So that has been challenging, but we've been able to work really hard and try to solve as many problems as we can, so sneakers of Genesis collection are being produced and should deliver shortly. We also did a subsequent drop
Right.
in April, which were our varsity jacket drops,
Right. Yeah.
which we wanted to kind of branch up a level and launch a new category. And it was the same concept, digital collection.
Right.
So physical luxury tied with a radical,
Okay.
3D animation. Kind of same formula. And, we had success with that. We ended up selling about, I think, 225 NFTs, okay,
Nice.
tied to physicals.
Sure.
So we generated at that point another over $200,000
Sure.
in income. But remember, our formula is made to order, right? So it's a bespoke model.
Yeah.
Obviously, more we sell, the better,
Of course.
but at that point, the market already started to soften a little
Right.
bit. It was like 2 months back, but we still kind of caught the tailwind of that. And now, our mission is to deliver the physical goods and get it in the hands of our collectors, right? We call them collectors. And we're a strong believer that once they receive the goods, that everybody's going to be super content with our quality level and, kind of believe in our word at the end, right? Because
Right.
this is also a credibility game where, we've made big promises and now we're going to deliver it. In the meantime, we've been focused the past 6 weeks on actually launching our own metaverse. And let me
Really interesting.
tap into that a little bit, So over the past 6 months, as we started our Genesis and Drop One collection, we knew that having avatars and having metaverse compatibility would be the future.
Sure.
Okay. And it comes down to very simple logic, right? We were successful selling a digital collection.
Right.
Okay. So a digital asset tied to physical. But in our revenue model moving forward, we can also sell digital onlys, okay? Digital wearables on avatars that can flex these digital wearables amongst different metaverses. For example, Decentraland or Sandbox are some of the
Of course.
biggest, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, we can sell physicals only as well, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we have that avenue. And plus, obviously, we can still keep our secondary trade revenue, right? From OpenSea, et cetera, on our NFTs. So kind of four revenue streams, which again is quite interesting to a fashion brand considering the traditional model, right?
Sure.
So in order for us to capitalize on the digital assets and the revenue of wearables,
Right.
we in our roadmap we have to launch our own avatar collection, right?
Yeah.
And in our roadmap, ultimately, we have to launch our own metaverse as well. Okay. So the first thing we did, and again, we pride ourselves as being pioneers and kind of architects within this space and really pushing the envelope as far as innovation and
Right.
technology. So I decided with the team to go again headfirst into the metaverse and develop our own metaverse experience, which is called Culture World. Okay.
Hmm.
So we have been in development with this partner of ours, Swivel Meta, based in Austin, Texas, and we're developing and producing our own unique metaverse experience. And the entire idea is that from our culture world, okay, which we're starting with phase one with two concepts. One concept is a culture shop, okay, so a virtual shop, a metaverse shop,
Sure.
where you will be able to enter and social shop together with other avatars, right? Social shopping for me is also the future,
Sure.
okay,
Sure.
as the next evolution of e-commerce, right? So I'm a firm believer that soon in the future, brand websites will no longer have this still e-commerce still shot of a product, and then you click, and I think that model is going to be reinvented. So we wanted to kind of get ahead of the curve and jump straight again headfirst into it. We've created our own culture shop so that in the future you will be able to enter the shop in your avatar, okay, and have this new experience virtually and be able to pick up and purchase digital products, physical products, and digital wearables all within this shop.
Got it. Okay.
That's kind of an interesting idea. And
Right.
we're building this out really as a beta proof of concept.
Sure.
Okay. And that's one space that we're building out. The second space we're building out is called Culture Lounge. Okay. So we're basically building out our own event, let's say town hall space, where we can host our own parties, where we can then have our community come in with their avatars, right? Where we can then debrief our community on what's happening with Colton Rain, okay, et cetera, and create this again social virtual experience for our community and our future collectors, right? And with this culture lounge, we will also be able to host parties moving forward, okay?
Right. Sure.
So this is quite an exciting concept that we're exploring as well. And then there's two other spaces that are in our roadmap for phase two and phase three. One is culture games. Okay, we want to be able to have gamification built into our metaverse where you enter as your avatar and your avatar is the subject of the game. So kind of like Squid Games from
Yeah.
Netflix, where imagine you're the avatar, you're going through a maze and you fall in a hole, you die, game over. But if you make it to the end of the maze, you win a prize.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Whether that's a future NFT uh, drop, whether that's discount, whether that's access to our community, et cetera, et cetera. Certain utilities will attach to that. So that's culture games, and then finally, in our phase two and phase three, we're also going to build out culture pad. And culture pad is kind of your own space in your own home, for example. Okay, so that you can enter into your culture pad and you can customize the space yourself and showcase your NFTs from your collection.
Right. Sure.
So these four spaces are kind of what we're building, and our entire metaverse lives within a digital truck.
Really?
Okay? So that we can park this truck, we can park this truck within other metaverses in the
Right.
future. So, for example, within Decentraland, within
Past that.
Sandbox, within Spatial, for example, if they go expand, and you'll be able to portal into our metaverse from their metaverse, vice versa.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So that's the grand vision, right? And yeah, so we're just building in steps. We know that that is the ultimate vision. We're going to launch our culture world actually in London,
You are. Okay.
tied to the Outernet building, okay, which is a digital building in the center of London. It's like $1 billion building
Right.
that has basically 12K screens wrapped around. It's kind of a really groundbreaking
Sure.
concept that they're unveiling. So it's like kind of like, yeah, like the Hudson Yards of London, for
Sure.
example.
Yeah.
So they're launching their digital building in July, and they're going to be hosting Colton Rain, launching our culture world, okay, as a premiere together with Outernet.
Yes.
Yeah, so that'll be around July 20th, okay, and we're working around that date, and we're going to host an event, okay, where in this digital space, this huge digital space, massive, we're going to feature our culture lounge and actually host a live DJ party, a live virtual party within the space where we're going to live stream a DJ from New York, okay, on the screen, and we're going to be partying and dancing in real life within this same space. So again, a digital experience that's kind of groundbreaking, and that's where we're headed as far as metaverse compatibility in future,
Sure.
and nobody really knows the right, I guess, answer to all this,
Of
but
course.
we're just building and we just keep pushing forward and we're kind of working towards a vision that we believe is the future.
Sure.
Like I do firmly believe that your kids, okay, will spend easily half their day, okay, within that metaverse
Sure.
with their alter ego, okay, alter ego avatar, and
Right.
they will need to purchase clothes. They will need a place to live. They will need a place to socialize. They'll need a place to shop, just like real life today, you know? So for me, that will become the next evolution of social media, okay,
Right.
which is already evident now, right? Like
Sure.
kids, my goddaughter, in Texas, in Houston, spends a huge amount of time per day on Roblox, you
Right.
know,
So does my
like
daughter.
with her avatar, and like her mother, spends quite a bit of money per month buying digital wearables for
Sure.
her avatar, so that generation, and I think she's 11, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's
It's the way
right.
it is. My
It's
daughter's 12,
exactly,
she has 9 different avatars on
exactly,
Roblox,
exactly,
depending
right.
on what mood she's in that day.
Exactly. So that's what's happening now. That's where we're headed. And I'm a firm believer that digital fashion will take off. But with Colt and Rain, we have the advantage of tying these assets with physicals too, you know?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like we want to become the bridge of luxury fashion
Sure.
between Web 2 and Web 3, and that's kind of my mission with the team.
It's interesting when I listen to what you're saying, you're in many ways, to me, you're redefining what a lifestyle brand is in a lot of ways. You have so much focus on experiential, and yes, you have physical product as well, that the way you're thinking about it, it's just very interesting to me, where it's not so much about an aspiration or set in a location or around some activity, but it's really built around this idea of culture and all these different types of experiences that can be personalized and interoperable, real world, digital only world. Very interesting approach that you're taking. I'm curious, do you see the future as having a lot more digital product or phygital product, or do you see most of your emphasis being on, say, the experiential side of what you just described?
That's a great question. I mean, we shall see. We shall see.
Okay.
Okay. This is definitely a work in progress. We're
Right.
in uncharted territories. We're one of the few Web3 brands that's actually building our own metaverse, you
Right.
know?
Okay.
Like that's a big,
Yeah.
right? That's a big, big aspiration. And so far what we've produced has been completely radical in line with our, let's say, luxury creative point of view.
Sure.
I do believe that we will probably lean heavier on digital wearables, okay? Simply because the costs associated with it are lower,
Sure.
okay? I mean, if you think about our Genesis collection, we sold each NFT tied with physicals at that point, zero point 0.5 Ethereum. With the market back then, it was like around 15,
Right.
$1,600, So a very expensive luxury product tied to NFT. What we've learned from that experience is it's a huge investment for the company as far as costs associated with producing these luxuries, as far as logistics, warehousing, shipping.
Right.
These were all, things that we anticipated, okay, but came in at a higher cost, of course, right? Because we're a startup and we just dove right into it. But for me, that was an investment, right? That was an investment. That was proof of concept, and it's investment because in the future, when we order more sneakers,
Mhm.
the process will be much faster.
For sure.
Investing in those molds costs us a fortune,
Right.
but now we own the mold. We have the mold. you know? So I would say, yes, to be determined, we will lean more on digital wearables for
Mm,
sure. But we also want to open physical stores in the future too, right? Like
sure,
we're not, yeah, we want to build out a luxury fashion brand and become the next Balenciaga of
sure,
Web3, you know?
absolutely.
So if we create a physical store, that will be a radical experience
Right.
too. So forget about clothes and hangers and folded, you can already probably imagine in my head
Oh, I'm sure.
much radical, more edgy concept where we can experience a fashion retail space in a completely different way, Again, tying physicals with digital, right?
Sure.
So I believe that in the future, brands like LVMH are carrying, these big luxury brands. Not only will you be able to go into a store, buy a bomber, for example, a physical version of it, you'll be able to go to the other side of the store and buy the digital version as well with the same credit card, okay? That basically ties it to blockchain on the digital side, okay? And maybe the physical side too, huh? Because in our roadmap, in the next phase, I will put that chip into the shoe. We
Shoot.
haven't done it yet because on the supply chain side, I basically have to, you know, break their method of producing sneakers that they've done for the past 100 years,
Right.
to
Right.
add like five more steps into it is
Sure.
not kosher at this stage. But as we scale, okay, as we scale and as our units become bigger, that would be my goal is to actually plug the chip into the shoe so that ultimately this shoe becomes a true digital shoe,
Right.
you know,
True digital. Right.
true digital. So that's again in the pipeline of to come.
Got it. Do you think that the owners of the shoes, the physical shoes, do you think they're going to be wearing them, or do you think they're going to be just collecting them? If
I
they
hope
collect a
I,
few,
I
you
hope they
wear it. What do you think that? How does
I
that
hope
going to work?
I hope they wear them, but
You
I
do.
hope they don't
Okay.
go like hiking in them.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and I don't think they will. And I think a majority of our collector, look, we have customers that own 20 pairs. We
Oh,
have multiple customers and collectors, again, as we call them, that
right.
own 15, pairs, multiple tens, multiple fives. These are believers in the brand and in the vision, and they're collectors, right? Like we really, if you think of NFT collectors, there's no difference between their, let's say, profile versus someone that collects art, someone that collects antiques, someone that collects sneakers. It's kind of the same mentality, right? Holding on to something that, as a collectible that will have more value in the future, right? So I hope they wear it because I would love to see Colton Rain sneakers in real life on the street. I think that's
Right.
going to be very gratifying.
For sure.
But I assume that some of them will collect. If they own five, they might wear a couple and keep the originals in mint condition, because as a as a sneakerhead, you always want it in mint condition, right?
For sure.
Uh, but yeah, so we'll see.
So if we can, just to close this out, I'd love to circle back to tap into your experience at established brands. What kind of, what would you be thinking if you were at an established brand, how to move into the metaverse or ways that you would leverage it? What would be going through your head if you were back at, say, some of the brands that you've been at in the past?
That's a great question again. If I was a big brand right now, the number one thing I would focus on is community. Yeah,
Community.
yeah. It all comes down to culture and community. It's not a space where you can buy your way in.
Right.
Okay, so none of your traditional marketing tactics will probably work within Web3.
Right.
Because it's still in its infant stage and it's very niche
Right.
group of, let's say, collectors, right, that hold exponential buying power compared to your classic,
Sure.
traditional Web3, let's say, customer, right? Yeah, there is a bridge, and more are coming in daily, right, from Web
Sure.
2, Web 3, and that's going to be the future, mass adoption, But I would focus on community building first, and I wouldn't jump straight into it with an NFT collection. I think that's a mistake too. I would ease into the process, building your community first, and maybe offering some wearables first, or try to create a marketing campaign that allows you perhaps to partner up with Web3 brands first. I would start with collaborations. Dip your toes into the water a little bit, before you go full blown all in, because the space it's not an easy space to maneuver around, and it moves extremely fast, and the risks are quite high.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, any other closing thoughts you wanted to share? I mean, you've given us an incredible sense of where you're going. It was actually far beyond what I was expecting. So thank you for doing that. We'll have to regroup in a year. I'm really looking forward, to what you're going to be doing in London. I mean, that sounds absolutely fantastic. So
yeah, that's gonna be a big event, and there's gonna be quite an extensive type of VIP guest list, across press, et cetera, and we're really excited. So I would say, closing thoughts, just thank you for inviting me. Always good to kind of talk about the brand and talk about the future. And we're definitely amidst a bear market right now. So
right.
anybody that's viewing this podcast, stay strong and believe in Web3. And it's just kind of going through the turbulence right now, but I'm sure hopefully soon, the turbulence air will stop, and the sun will come out again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, George. This was
No,
really
my pleasure.
fantastic. And I'm sure, well, maybe I'll see you next week at NFT NYC.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Metaverse Matters by Pebble Ventures. If you enjoyed the content, please do subscribe and rate the show. You could also connect with us on LinkedIn at pebbleventures.com or directly at mike@pebbleventures.com. If you're a brand exploring the space, or you're already testing and are looking to develop next-level strategies, please do reach out. We'd welcome an introductory conversation to learn more about your goals, where you are in the process, and share our thoughts about your business. Have a great day.